Welcome to the flux generation lines, high center interference, I-924, line conditions, high 9, line conditions of 144, track line vision. Correlation lines of track line is cyclism, line position all levels of travel. All formation to its screen lines, adaptation lines of surface is understanding your correlation setting and track division to its cycles. It generates the screen lines in high position. It allocates position and time frames. Now, the track with position line high interference, you all align communication timelines all at once in center communication line system. Fluctuation line conditions, all line rotations, the flux capacitor. Yeah, flux lines correlation setting high interference. Putting you guys in time to timeless, shape to shapeless, form to formless, and allocations, right? These are the three track line provision lines you guys have to go through for application of your travels. This is the mechanism of the line center through your system. The allocated timeline, switching line communication line system. The correlation line to track communication species is in line position location 24 clockings. Line calculation setting. Now, the team's also in 24 clockings, but they're out of the 25 clocking setting. The correlation lines of track lines and high center interference and track position line cycles generates the screen lines. So it puts position lines of travels. The center core line condition universal line rotation is 2075. There's no past of anything. So this is how it's set up line conditions. Flux capacitor and application. Let's start with travel. Okay, set lines. Three triangulation lines, split lines, high center interference. Everybody's here at traction. Everybody's here, right? So no past, only setting. Okay? Calculation from here to here and travel. Okay? Calculation of solar generation screen line. Eyes of Horus. Now, direct lines of correlation lines of the panel correlation lines of platforms transition and application line condition of center. Position lines high center interference in line position is circulatory line condition of all line high interference. Direct modifications 1 and 2 in lines of 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 location. Base recognition. Time sequence lines, correlation lines, and track lines. High center interference time position programs. Direct modification lines, correlation to ground lines. Size communication lines separate line rotations into high interference, space communication, and separatation. Done by equation, line signals and travel line rotation cycle generation. Okay, so you have to understand how this is all set up now. Okay, we're on the center core line condition of flux. Computer-generated lines and aligns machine operation line condition setting. So 24 line cycles, 24 lines of panels, east lines and I-line rotation cycles, communication setting, position travel. One-way operation line center interference. High position travels, point lines of tracks on the 3 lines of arrows and indicates position programs. Direct modification ground lines, shift line, cross line condition setting, flux capacitor, set position travel. Now, in line signal, we have the center correlation lines, platforms of communication, cross line, signal lines, high center interference at 3 set locations. Direct modification lines, center interference. You guys are no longer in your cerebros. Mystical cortex division lines at dimensional lines of space and time. Out of transdimensional space, correlation lines, and ethereal planes and trackifications and capsule and calculation. That's where you guys are. Track division line at 24-24, platitude lines at 24-24, and track line division. Correlation lines, center correlation line calculation, flywheel, and track location. Now, directing lines of calculation lines to Earth, the Earth line center, right? 3,000 lines, 3 set locations, 3 zero line rotations, seconds lines, minutes lines, and hours. In set location line condition, position over power. Generates screen lines, adaptation lines of surface, and track location provision. Set calculation, high position operation, right? Now, directing lines at 24 line calculation setting puts a 25 clock line setting in position of center operation. The spacing line is in a core track line provision in stargates. Direct lines, modification lines, 45-degree angles, and a line position location at 24 line setting. Travel correlation lines, track lines. So Jip's got to set up the stargates and portals lines on 24,000 line screen. Heather does set up lines at 24,000 lines of data. Communication line center interference locations, and Chris has to set up 24,000 line communication flywheels all through the species. Hemdo's got to set up 24,000 line communication towers, communication. Calculations, McCall has set up 24,000 lines of polarities and trackifications. Parallels, paradox, and position of all lines, pulsar communication lines, and high center interference, out position location compulsars. Direct lines, modification line screens, high center operation line condition system. All track line provisions, echo chambers, communication lines of Morpheus, line condition, high calculation setting. 24,000 line setting, high calculation position programs. 24 lines of space, 24 lines of panels, and 24 lines of Earth. Okay? Clock and line rotations, generation screen lines. Okay, ops systems and travel. Complicated location setting and travel position operation surface. One center line rotation center, correlation lines of highest center interference. Okay. Now it gets really interesting if you understand the process, how this all works in correlation lines of tracks. Direct lines of center, center correlation lines of tractions. Okay. Directing lines, one line cycle in line rotation surface and Earth location. Okay, so 2 lines of cycles. So you got 3 lines of provision lines of Earth now. Lines of setting into mystical cortex of design. You're out of your cerebros now. You're in mystical cortex in 3 set locations. If you watch set lines of correlation lines of track lines and matrix locations in space discoveries, that's the calculation line setting, where it's high calculation lines of episode position lines 5. Direct lines of modifications really understand the cortex lines and oscillations, core lines of tracks, DNA travels, line rotation cycles, and generation screen lines of high calculation. Face recognition, time sequence times pi. Correlation track lines of high position location, 1 line cycle, line conditions of face recognition. Okay, so directing lines of 3 lines of cycles generates the screen lines, 3 lines of measure. Okay, so we have 3 line rotation cycles, 3 lines of center, and 3 lines of space location, 3, 3, 3, right? 2 panels, correlation lines of space and time and travel. Okay, direct lines, modification lines, calculation high center interference into 2 panels into position of 4. Setting coordinate lines, calculation lines to the golden gates and line rotations to its angels in angelic realms as applications as center correlation to track location. Okay, setting position line center. So everybody gets activated lines for high interference in 24 lines of sky, 24 lines of panels, 24 lines of high calculation Earth line rotation surface, in position of a data formation screen. Direct lines modification screen lines of center line, set lines of synergy in line rotation, flux capacitors application. Travel calculation on the point lines of high interference in rhetorical fields. Sets lines of communication line to line division and set calculations. Direct modifications, orbs, probing, and line rotation surface and track location and measure. Okay, done through equation set calculations, face recognition, right? All right, so there's a lot going on, guys. Species has to recognize the communications now on a 45 line angle. Okay, on a 24 lines of pi. Now, a position of team line sequence comes in line sending high interference into 144. Track division of 3 cycles, calculus line interference, set line conditions. 2075 correlates the track lines of 3, sets lines of 3, 3 communications and direct signals, and 3 in center and travel communications. 3 points lines, 3 equals lines of 24, 24 equals lines of calculations, north, east, west, and line centers of south. Sending coordinates lines of high calculation line position of travel. Point lines of travel is a 3 line position measure. Coordinate from calculation line 2075 and set location. Direct modification of the 3 line center of calculation. Direct lines high interference of solar sails and track from position location calculation high interference and travel. Direct modification line cycles. All right, generate screens. Flywheel, track line, provision lines of cycles. Generate the screen lines high center interference into northwest, south, and east and travel communication of point lines of traction. Direct modification of fly line centers, high travel position, earth line rotation surface, and astral projections. Direct modification lines on magnetic highway information line screen, high interference, Omni highways, and center coordinates in the track line position. Done by equation. The center core line condition setting is a 24 line measure that allocates position of time centers, allocates to your system location and pre-flights. Direct lines of the avatar line conditions, point lines of attractions, 24 line setting. Okay, so you got a 24 equals lines of correlation setting, 0.1 species, right? 24 line setting of panels, 1 line directions, opposite line conditions, high center interference. So you get 24 lines of east, set lines of high center, 24 lines of west, north, and south. Setting coordinate lines of track lines in 1 line cycle and 3 line rotation, generation screen lines, high center interference, and position location of flux and set location. Generates the screen lines high in the center, sets lines of Earth, rotates the cycles. Earth is always going to be in the ground setting, which is all set locations, into a black hole and line rotation surface. Now, direct lines modification has a platform, 24 line setting in position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 generation lines of high calculation, 2 line settings, 0 line, 7 line, position 5. 5 track line provisions, equals lines of correlation line conditions, north line cycles, 24 line rotations, E line calculation setting, 24 line setting of solar sail. Direct modification line calculations, cobwebbing line rotation surface. Flywheel correlates lines attractions. Direct line settings, face recognition. Face recognition. See it? Done by equation. All right. That's the center correlation calculation of species. All right. Directing lines, modification lines. So the Earth is on the ground line, but it's a 3,000 line measure. Correlation at 3,000 seconds, minutes over lines of position over pi. Correlates calculates line 60,000 line calculation minutes, position over power, generates screen lines of solar sails, line rotation cycles, and generates screen lines adaptation line surface applications, all through species correlation and attraction. Done by equation. All right. Now the center unit in line connects to the team line allocates position time frames. Their solar sail is line communicating. Set coordinates lines attract line time position in a data formation screen. Cubicle line, screen lines, and box line rotations and travels. Point lines attracts at a 45-degree angle, but the angle line shifts lines, cross lines, screen lines. Sets lines are marked about position location, high interference, data position programs. Point lines attracts and high center calculations. Omni highways and direct line centers and northwest, south, and east and travel position point centers. Now the center core line center, you still have your earth line connections also in a line connection setting, but you're in 6,000 line set locations in setting. 6 million line frames and highest interference, mocking 30 each second line position of binary, line connection transition resistors, box location and 24 line position of data, inline rotations in center core system, travel coordinates line track lines, highest interference and position operation line system, and travel coordinates line condition setting of travel. Done by equation. So getting position lines of highest interference, guys, is really understand how to modify your system with phase direction timelines. See the phase rectification line set locations. Okay, so we set the lines of communication to the moon, allocates specific time frame line condition setting to the sun and cloud communication. Directs modification lines of sunline, operation surface, and position location, mystical cortex line condition setting to travel. Directs modification line screens, high center interference, and earth line set location line condition at 24 zones. Directs modification of platforms, crossing line signals, line condition setting, and position of 5 line generation screen lines adaptation. Direct calculation modification sunline allocates position lines of Pluto. Pluto comes in line calculation in the opposite direct signals. We allocate position time frames, correlates the track line provision lines of cycles, generates the screen lines highest interference, the center correlation line condition of balance position rotation cycles generation. Done through the line screens, highest interference, and position programs. Done by equation. All right. Metric meters over scales, balance lines, signals, modification, screen lines, allocates position time frames. So the team line and the correlation line calculates lines. Grand Canyon, line interference transformer unit. Trans line, transdimensional space, allocate line conditions, all suit up. Center correlation lines, Grand Canyon, line rotations, weather patterns. Correlation lines, box frame. Modification line, center interference, heart rate timelines. Plateau line rotations of 24 line cycles, direct piece setting, 1000 line setting, 7 line units, set rotation cycles, generates the screen lines off 10, sets lines correlation alpha, delta, theta, and operation lines omega, gamma line signature, position location of sun, and correlation lines attraction and divisions, center core lines, centers of platforms, and allocate time sequence. XT1000 comes in platforms, scans lines, screen lines of center position, operation line cycles, generates the screen line calculation setting, position operation. All right, so Grand Canyon line conditions, 20 minutes on frame, clocking setting. Clocking lines of channels, direct to signals, modification lines, and center interference, puts all communication to its position of its program. Now the position lines attraction allocates position of time frames. Let's allocate position line centers, 19 line screens, sets lines of 7 equals lines of timeless. Time line, screen line, high interference, formulous. Calculates line interference of balance line, calculates the shapeless. 3 correlation lines of 1, 2, and 3 lines of solar sails, in 3 line provision cycles and generation screen lines, adaptation lines of surface. Now position lines calculation lines of 3 line rotation earth line, 4 line rotation cycles, 2 panels, correlation lines of spaceless and timeless, pattern correlation lines of platforms, 1, 2, and 3 lines of 4, setting lines of 5 platforms of communication, setting correlation lines of high center location of 6 platforms of correlation, ground lines, high center interference of travel, direct calculation line interference of 8 travel positional platforms, correlation line conditions, and 1 graph calculation. Direct modification lines of highest interference, set position of energetic dome screens of highest interference, and position of travel. Direct modification lines, cycle lines, highest interference, position of programs, and set application line conditions, high position. Done by equation. The center core line center is its center operation, right? Let's go through security line measures into red. Red correlates the track line provision lines of cycles. High alert, 2075, sets lines of center, okay? Correlation line calculates lines and all lines of the Earth is 3,000 line rotation cycles in generation. Calculates line interference and 3 line provision lines calculates line interference. 3 million in line rotation cycles, 6 million in line calculation of team. So 6,000 line conditions, highest interference, Earth rotation cycles generates lines in all levels of crystalline communications in anti-carrying location setting to travel. Direct modification lines, cycle lines, highest interference to travel positional point lines of graphs, and center coordinate transformation units and applications. Direct modification lines of high interference, human resonance comes in. Now, the core track line position location, when it comes into the spacing line, they come in the allocate position time frames. We're going to stay on red line rotation, 2 platforms, and 3 line provision. Now, color comes in. Calculus lines, sun line, travel line, rotation surface, track location. Direct modification center line correlation lines of traction allocates position time frames application. Direct modification line screens highest interference earth line rotation surface in a 3000 angle on its application. Now, directing lines of signals. We change the coloration path at 12 line signals. That allocates position time frame. The position to your pi correlates the calculations. So we go lines of high interference. Infinity line runs at lines of 8. Okay, set lines of 8, 8, 8 in track location. Direct line modification. We change the colors line screens. Back and black into a diamond core line shift line, box line rotations, and line rotation surface, and a 3 line position travel. Position lines of track lines allocate position at all levels. Black signals. Rotation lines, crop circle, and design lines, highest interference, and position locations. 4 generations at 3 travels, and line rotation surface. Position lines of calculation lines at 8. Color the line center interference, metric meter, scales lines of hologram. Direct lines of box line rotation surface, 24 line cycles, and line condition of north equals lines of calculation north, west, east, and south. The lines of north. Correlation lines of high interference equals line of correlation, equal lines of correlation lines, and position of box lines, time line center interference. Overdraft. Center line, back and line rotation surface, correlation of track lines, back and 0, line rotation, in phase direction of time sequence, position of panel. Direct calculation, modification line screens, highest interference. Directing lines is security line, screen lines. Okay, pay attention to this. 22 line division equals lines of 7. Center correlation lines of 16 line screens. Direct lines of 15 line rotation, and position lines of 17 traction. 0, 0 operation. Okay, so the team has to take out the timeline, which is timeless now. So you have to do it through box and triangulation frame, triangulation box, okay? Time does no longer exist. You understand that, guys? Center correlation of ground lines of the earth. Center correlation line, center interference, 3000 line seconds, position over power. Direct modification of 3 panels, correlation of tractions, 3 platforms. Center correlation lines of 2 track lines, 2 operation line cycles, 6 line divisions, 1 line traction, 7 line rotations, and solar sails of 7, 7 lines of 2, 2 track locations, solar sail. So it's really understand how to coordinate line condition setting and metric screen lines as center correlation lines on 3 panels, 3 earth line rotation cycles, and generation magnetic high line condition setting in high position location amidst the vortex of design. It's all through calculation, right? I know it's very complicated what we're coming into some location line conditions. But the direct lines of high center interference, the species has to coordinate now. They have to use their the wave lines. They have to come into their telepathy, mind line, track lines, high center interference, brain state location setting, graph calculations, heat signature line screens, direct lines modifications, signature screen lines, 0 correlation lines, earth line rotation surface. Now, directing lines of center line is really understanding the process, how it comes to 1 atom line centers, the 3 track locations, 1 line molecule line design, and 1 center correlations of the mindset location of travel. Direct modification lines of center correlations of travel, center line communication of 3 atmosphere location of travel. So that's what you guys are now at 2 panels in position earth, power, and atmosphere. Okay. Timeless line sequence line connections of platforms, set lines of 4 traction, but the position of team traction is all lines crossing line signals now. Okay, so they're able to go to higher levels of platforms, higher line division location, metric meter, lines, scale, and communication machine operation setting. They go for north wind, south wind, east wind, and 1 sector lines of pi. But they're Mach 30, and each line's a second. Now that allocates position location in their systems. Travel correlation lines is a 3000 line error. 3 line signals, lines equal location of 6000 line error. Sublocation of species, sublocation of team, and sublocation of travel. Earth line rotation surface, human resonance, correlation lines of 2 panels, and track line position. This is what is on your human resonance. Okay? Track division line cycles generate the calculation lines and position location measure, allocates position time frames. Center correlation line interference, 3 million line cycles. Set lines high center, 6 million line cycles. 9 lines setting high interference. Puts lines on lines of 6. Travel line communication 9, and correlation lines of traction, high division of yin and yang, of process communication. Now direct lines of panels put 6 lines of 9 and not lines of 12. Sets lines of communication line centers, a platform communication line system. X2000 comes in, scans line center, evaporation, center correlation lines of system, center correlation lines of earth, and rotation surface and traction. Done by equation. Okay, you can see it coming in, right? It's amazing how it platitudes line screens. So we allocate line rotation, center correlation, crop circle line division, guys, center calculation on the screen line. And this is all done through 115. Okay? Okay, so you're working with your connections of your earth, your air, your water, and your fire. 5 metric meters, 2,075 center core line connections, 5 direct signals, equal location lines, 5 channels, communication line settings, 3 position lines of 3-4 line rotation cycles, generations. The species are in 333 and position travel lines. The team is now in 3 line connections of 4. Center correlation on the track line provision of cycles. Okay. Now, direct lines modification line calculations on understand line interference. Your flywheel. Flywheel correlates calculation line connection setting and position of travel. Points lines of setting. Orbs channels, probing line rotation surface. Balance correlation of the track lines. So the correlation of the team now has to balance at the 3 center line communication of the mystical cortex of design. You guys are the cerebrals now. You're in the mystical line screen. Center correlation of platforms of 1, 2, and 3. Sets lines of 1, 2, and 3 track location. Center correlation of platforms of 1, 2, and 3 lines of measure. Going up the scales and travel communication of point lines attractions. Allocates position of the Earth. Center core lines of center and position of mystical cortex. And magnetic highway, Omni highways, and track location of provision of cycles calculation. Okay. See the walkway surface, how it changes the correlation lines of attraction. It's very powerful once you really understand how this all works in platforms, guys. So the team line is now in line and position how to go through the platform communication line system at 24, 48, 72, and 144. The 144 stands for division. It's a foundation, bunch of correlated line track lines and center correlated lines, centers 170. Correlation line connections of 180. Track locations line centers of 200, and line rotations equals lines. 300 lines of measure equals lines of correlation line center interference. 3,000 line measure. Correlation of 3 panels, correlation equals lines of 2 operation cycles of generation. That's the position of the team. Okay. Center correlation lines of highest interference. 25 line cycles, set lines of highest interference. Center correlation lines of 24. Sets location of 24, 24, and 24 line conditions. Setting and diamond core, set location of travel, and set position of operation. Okay. So the clocking system of the team now is in a 24 line measure of northwest, south, and east of north. Northwest, south, and east, and west and south. Okay. Spacing lines are in northwest, south, and east in the 24 clocking and the 25 clocking setting that puts in position of 0 operation of 144 tracks. Now, division lines of screens, flywheel correlating lines of solar flares, direct lines of solar sails, dimensional sails, correlation sails, direct sails, high center, interference sails, machine sails, correlation tracks, direct modification crystalline high interference location tracks. Center correlation lines of 3,000 lines of measure, correlation line of 24 lines of high center interference, line communication to line divisions, guys, allocate position timeframes. Walking system line conditions. So the plat division location comes in line signal. Okay, it's really interesting applications. The avatar can walk now in set location with platforms. Go from here, time jump from here. Okay, same coordinates lines attractions, all levels of measure in set location. Same calculation of 3 lines. Now you're in the mystical cortex valve. Okay, team. The calculation of lines of the cerebral is the species line and correlation lines of traction. 3 line generation screens, panel correlation lines, travel lines of 42 screens, dimensional lines of scales, 3-dimensional doors. Remember I talked about dimensional doors? Well, you're in a 3-track vision now. You're in a 24-dimensional door in 1 cycle. So out of 3 line cycles, set 3 line rotation surface and traction. Going through dimensional lines of scales, line conditions doppelgangers, and line rotation surface and track locations to Earth, power generations, and magnetic highway information, Omni highway correlation and attraction. Directed lines of communication setting is really to stand your solar sails attractions. How you go to line communication, your settings and measure. It gets complicated. Like it's not already complicated. All through set location. Okay, it's complicated, isn't it? Trying to understand what's going on, right? All right, so everything comes in sequence, lines of how I calculate high interference and position of the programs, guys. Okay, how everything is human resonance set location. This is what you see in the human resonance when you go through the I line, division line connections, AI calculation screen. All right, so it modifies lines at XT1000 line setting. Now the Omni highway is changed division lines of tractions, all right? Correlation lines of tracking positions. Now the communication lines of the 24 line cycle, 24 lines of panels, and position 24 lines of space. 6 lines of 0 gravity, equals lines of 1 equals location of 0, lines of 1 equals lines of 0, line communication of 1. Sets location of 0, line communication of 1, set locations. Travel line rotation cycles, 0 point lines, and set location line conditions. Species. Right? Track position lines of 0 lines, cross line signals. Right? Direct lines of 24, 20 lines of measure. Sending 24 lines of panels, 2 lines of traction, 2 line divisions, and 4 calculation. Now, you have to learn how to travel with the line screens. Mystical cortex comes in line calculation into the team line sequence. Now, directing lines of panels, cross line setting, and a flywheel. Solar generation line setting, high interference of travel communication. Now, the direct line signals, the line center line interference puts all communications, right? Spacing line correlation, team line track lines, 24 lines of colossal calculation lines of clouds. Now, the direct line centers has a center core setting, sets provision lines of cycles into earth line rotation, transits over lines communication. Now, direct communication X2000 comes in, scans line screen, okay, allocates time frames into line centers as center. 3 lines of provision, 4 lines of tractions, cross line signals, right over left, left over right, allocates line screen centers of communication. Now, direct lines modification lines of 0 lines of 1, center lines of communication center, and 3 track provisions, and cyclones and communication of flywheel, rotation, surface, and traction. Okay? Complicated, right? When you understand your navigations of travel. Okay? Center lines of high center interference and position of program. Okay? Powerful stuff, isn't it? Okay, so the center communication is now set up through clock lines. Clock lines, clockless, timeless, timeless. Direct lines, in lines, out lines, and audio line rotations. 3 line provisions, 3 waving panels. Correlation line track lines of 1, 2, and 3 set location. Direct calculation of box frames, theta correlation lines of tractions. 1 center correlation, track lines of 1,000 line setting into 7 locations, 7 channels, 7 communications, 7 rotations. Direct lines of earth. Now you're working with 3 earths now, team. Okay? Correlation line calculation lines and high center interference. The species are working with 2 earth cores. You guys are working with 3 earth cores. Travel lines of 1. Let's put position lines of cycles. Sets correlation lines of crop circle line, condition setting, and measure into 144 track location provision of sonar and track line position. Pi generation screen lines, high center interference, cobwebbing, light coding, light webbing, dark webbing, and line rotation surface and track location. Okay? Center core lines of tractions, 1 line, signature line, and 3 line rotation. Now, this really gets interesting because you come into pi generation screens, allocates time frames and box line rotation surface in the data form. Plotted 2 lines of data screen line interference where you change your box lines into dime shift line screen lines. Changes correlation lines. This is the metric meter location of scales. What the team can do now, they can change box into diamonds or anything circle line communication setting and travel position operation. Now, direct line modification lines is center core, changes communication lines. The wind sectors correlates to the track lines of vision. The center core line center height interference is a center core setting, allocates time calculation to its position. All through traction. Okay? All right, team? All right. So the equation line, screen line. So the calculation setting, we're no longer in time setting. We're in timeless. So like I said, you have to get out of provision. You got a 26 cycle and you got 8 line provision. And line setting, let's put in a 30 line rotation. Clock lines a 3 line rotation surface in line setting the 3 platforms. Pi generation of 4 box location center. Okay. So we have to get out of line setting because we're in line setting of 27. Sets location of 8 line rotation. Sets lines of high center interference. Sets locations and line center interference. Now, even though it's not at 30, let's say it's at 29:15, you can change that through time frame. Because remember, there's no connections of time setting anymore. It's timeless and shapeless and formless. You're getting out of time setting. Then you come shapeless and formless. But the clocking system no longer exists in setting in 2075, the allocate position time frame. So I can change that 29:30 into 30 set location. Time sequence 2 atoms, 2 operation line cycles, or set lines of 30, equal lines of correlation of 2 atom line rotations into 0.1 attraction in set locations. Okay? So it's really interesting how you get out of time frame. Okay? Because we're at 25 lines of 8 now. Is that coincidence? No. My computers communicate with me in a 25 cycle and innate provision, right? That's how I'm communicating in a box frame at 24 lines in a high center location setting and box location of frames and traction. All right, so now we're in the 30th setting. See, 30 setting equals lines at 0 lines of 9. Adding line conditions, waiting on the signal to 15 travels. Sets correlation of 20, sets location of 30, and track location. So I know exactly how it's going through a solar sail in a 25 line angle. Sets core lines of center lines, center correlation lines of earth line, into mystical cortex of design line position of clock location. Direct lines modification line settings to 30 line rotations. Direct modification line cycle lines, high center interference, into clockless, timeless, and shapeless and formless. Direct and modification lines is 30 line rotation. Travel lines are high center interference, equal lines correlation, so you can have 2 point centers, or you can have true triangulation line condition setting, or you can have 2 box location system. Travel position of point lines of traction. Setting coordinate lines of high interference. 1 position crosses line signals, high interference. Travel line rotation cycles, cross line signals, line conditions, cross line signals. Let's travel position ground lines, high center interference platforms, travel line rotation surface and traction. Now it's really interesting how I look at a 31 line screen and a 10 line rotation, a 25 measure, a clock line rotation, and 8 line provision. Now it's all understanding the panels, binary relines connection setting the center operation. 4 track lines, high center interference, 2075 track line provision of cycles. That correlates the center correlation of track lines and provision lines calculation setting to its flywheel track location provision. Now the correlating line has a platform. Now the platform allocates specific time frames its application. Direct lines calculates lines, mystical cortex design line, center coordinate system, and travel position its operation. Now the coordination lines of the earth line, center coordinate system, and travel and position its calculation. It disappeared too fast. And set calculation. All right. All right, so you guys are coming into plasma generation screen lines of plasmesium force line walls. It correlates the track lines and provision lines that calculates the screen line. If you look really close, you can actually see the intelligence informations into cluster communications and track line condition setting in high center interference in position dislocation intelligence. ET. Okay. All right. ET phone home. I like the part when she was looking at the TV and he was behind the TV. He's going, B, A, C. Oh, it's lost its eye. It disappeared. All right, so we're having fun here in track location of platforms, right? So it's really interesting when you really get in the correlation lines of track lines of platforms, guys. Really correlate the track line position line system, especially at a 25 line condition measure, scale lines calculations. So the team now has to get out of time. Don't see things as time now. 33 equals lines of box. Box lines in a 23 line measure, correlation lines at 8 cycles of generation. That's the time. That's the time, but it's timeless, shapeless, and formless, right? 3 line cycles, 3 line rotations equals line of correlation lines. Solar generation lines of 2 platforms, box line rotation center, correlation line center, 23 lines of Fibonacci line swirls, line interference, and center correlation line track lines of face recognition. See? You see how it turns in position follow into all location of face recognition time sequence? Timeless, guys, timeless. Now the clock line high center interference puts all over the communication setting. Dimensional sales is really understand how to formulate the calculation of the system. Now, if you've got line centers, box line rotation surface, 1 traction, 2 lines, 3 lines, 4 set locations. Center correlation lines of tractions gets bigger over time. Okay, sets locations gets bigger over time. See, we're going to correlation gets bigger over time, people. Okay, in settings. So the metric meter has a balanced line screen, allocates energy grid line screen location adaptation. Center core lines of platforms 1, 2, 3, and 4 settings. 1, 2, 3 set location. Okay. Metric line centers. We're not in the cerebral now, guys. We're in the line center interference, the mystical cortex line division, and line setting calculation of center correlation of capsules. Direct modification lines of center correlation lines of the earth, and center correlation line setting and travel position operation. Direct modification line signals in 4 set location. Okay. Calculation lines, high center interference, travel lines of point lines of traction, high center. Platform communication line system is really understand how to use your core line channels, interlocation and modification line screens of platform communication. Okay, boom. Okay, higher levels of travel lines, higher level of metric meters, calculates screen lines. But the adaptation line center is 24, 24, 24, 24, and so allocation 25. Okay, species correlation, right? 12 line signals, line conditions out through equation of 45-degree angle. 45 equals lines and high center interference, 100% line setting. Set specification into line center of 0.1 zoom traction. Okay, that's what species are. So they're in the center core system and two earth line. Earth line 1 and earth line 2 in track location. Now, position line has an energetic dome allocate to its location re in line condition to its setting. Now, it's all about understanding the measure correlation lines of 12 traction. Direct modification of platforms of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 set location. Okay? Now, directing lines of communication settings, we understand how to use the earth line tones in track location and provision lines and center core lines of grounds. Center core lines up and a 24 lines of panels and line rotation surface and track location. Now, line center high interference comes into triangulation split, that 3 lines anomaly, line center line interference, and 1 box frame at theta communication setting and travel position of its operation. Direct lines of course lines of tractions in a 45-degree angle, sets communication opposite direct signals set location. Another platform comes in the ground line, surface lines of triangulation line position as program. Sets position of 1, sets position of 2, and 3 line communications. Okay, through 0 operation of 4 line to 3 line tractions is 0, 0, or 0.1 in track line conditions. Understand how to platitude of screen lines and high interference into pixelation, hologram, or anything that's set design or VRs. Tracking lines of platforms in communication setting is really understand how to use yourself in set locations. Or you're going to be a lot of Quebec and a lot of Yankee if you understand your platform communications. All through 0 track lines and high center. Okay? In line center high positions operation service. All right, because your guys are downgrading. So the center core line center is now in a dipping line rotation constellation screen. Sending correlations tracks in position, right? So that's where the team is doing now. They can go this way, 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 and this way. Okay, that's what the team can do. So the platforms can go here and travel lines. You can still in a 45, but you're out of the 25 clocking system now. But you can position. You can go through half pipes now. Correlate through Gypsy and line settings. Set up platforms in set location and ground lines at 3 set location. All right, so you go from 1 line signal to all calculation of highest center interference. So this is north line, east lines of south, calculation of coordinates of Pluto, and calculations of Tango Tango and Foxtrot. Northeast south lines of platforms of 3 setting. Position lines of high interference. Now you get a south wind sector. Coordinate lines on a quantum line screen into Tango Tango, Foxtrot of 1, 2, 3 of platforms of communication. Now, direct calculation lines of center its communication, its earth line rotation surface and tracking and measure. That disappeared. Too fast line condition setting, earth tone set location. All right. So that's what the team's in. All right. So they're downgrading line screens. They're calculating into the classical calculation of galaxy line screens. So the 24 line, we're coming into line condition setting of geostorms. Geo lines, setting lines of E-line rotations, correlates in lines of track lines. Computer operation, machine operation, memory line, correlation lines of awareness, AI calculation, screen lines, adaptation. Direct modification lines of center line correlates the track lines of position. You have 3 lines of earth tones into inhabitation lines and mystical cortex line condition setting and travel. Okay, so the team's in 3 earth line rotations of 2 platforms, 4 track provisions, and 3 lines of 4 settings. Travel 1, travel 2, travel 3, travel 4, and travel 5 in platform. Okay. So you have to really understand how this all works in travel communication, right? That's what the team's in now, all right? So they're downshifting. You can cross screen line center interference. You can set up geometry lines of travels. You can go through this way in set location, or you can go through this way in set location, or you can go through this way in set location, all right? So it's really understand the center correlation lines so you can up in position, or you can go down in position, or you can go in center operation surface set location. These are the things that the team can use in set location of travel. Right? Directed modification lines of northwest, south, and east and travel position of 4-point lines of tractions and 3 lines of pi. Now, the direct lines of calculation screen line allocates position time frame. So let's go to the 22 line measure. Sets correlations at 8, set lines and line rotation. Let's wait till it gets to 40. 40 lines, let's add it to 44. That's 4 minutes over pi. 4 correlation line centers, 4 million channels, direct lines of 4 billion cycles, and a 4 trillion set location of Earth line rotation as center correlation lines of 0 grounds and calculation screen, all through clocking. But it's clocking less timeless. All through measure and scales, lines, and solar generation screen lines of solar flares, solar sail, and line rotations, Earth line 1, 2, and 3. 3 correlation lines of track lines into mesocortex lines of data and process communication. Now, the center core line centers of the platforms adds lines of 3 lines and 4 set location, right? Travel lines of the platform sets lines of communication of 4 lines of measure. Correlation on high interference travels lines of 3 set location of travel. That's what the team can do now, right? Your platforms go this way, this way, this way, this way. You can go through 144 track location of platforms and set calculation line screens and send in position to its operation surface and track revision to its calculation and high calculations in all platforms of communication. Okay? The species lines has to stand the intersection lines of interface. They get a 4-track revision and cross-line screens. Okay? That's what the team's got to get into. Team line centers, correlation lines of tractions, and position locations. Combinate orb line channels, correlation lines of track lines of orbs, and platforms of communication and settings of probing. Directs modification lines of its atom, allocates position time frames, and metric meterification of teleportation units and screens. Now, the modification line calculations. Species is the intersection lines of 4, center correlation lines of travel line, position operation line, connecting high center. Now, line communication line centers in position of 24 line cycles, set location lines of Earth, use lines of 2 traction, and settings. Setting line connection lines of 4 track line provision, cross line screen line interference, 24 line setting, and out of 25 clocking into 144 to 170. Calculation line center interference, 1000 set lines, high 7 line rotations. Track calculation of platforms 1 and position platforms 2 and Earth line rotations, sight lines, high center interference, and set location. The generation screens, guys, you have to understand how to see your lines of timeless to timeline setting high interference of formless, shapeless. So 42 track provision. They say, well, wait a minute. It's 42 hours, 42 minutes, or 42 seconds, right? 42 hours, 42 minutes, and calculation line centers at 42 seconds. Right, so locations. Now you can freeze lines of panels and set lines of high calculations. Hemisync lines, metric meters, lines of scales, and lines of systematic line rotations, center correlation lines of track lines, Earth line 1, correlation lines, set lines of Earth line 3, set location line, Earth line at 12 line rotation surface. Now you have to really understand how it allocates position time frames. Let's add lines of 9. I know it's complicated, right? So this is all about direct and redirect line conditions coming out timeless. So when you're looking at a clock, you're looking at clockless, and shapeless, and formless, all calculation all at once. The center core system is not line conditions of 43 in set location. It's 46 in set location. Okay. Oh, now it's 48. You don't have to wait and signal because you're already there. The avatar is already there in a 3-line panel and line rotation surface. Ground lines, power lines, atmosphere location. Okay. So it's really understand the altitude line screen if you get into all calculation modifications into atmospheres, hemispheres, stratospherics, bio-radium. Each line has an atmosphere lines, in-line rotation surface, and traffication of platforms and communication setting to travel. Setting correlation lines of 1 position, 2 position, and 3 traffication provision. Okay. Walking those steps and platforms of 1 in setting, 3 lines provision, 4 cycles, 3 platforms of communications. Calculation cross-line screen. Set lines, highest interference, and line rotations, and 4 traffication provision of platforms. Direct lines calculation, cross-line setting, straight line interference, platforms 1, 2, and 3, and track location. Okay? Walking steps and line setting high interference, getting out of timeless and positional calculation. So it's very powerful. I come into mystical cortex and the line settings and navigation lines of 0 and track location. That's right, navigation 0. Now, navigation 0 is a platform key indication that allocates position times, that line position to your ESC. It's on your computer. Navigation lines of 1, flight navigation lines of high center interference, flights, equals lines of 12, 12 lines center, 6 over pi, correlated set 12, half pipe set lines of high center line of rotations, cross line singles, neutralized correlation lines, escape line rotation surface, and traffication of position and measure. Now, direct lines of position lines of high center interference is the negative lines of L. Now, L line rotation, negative equals lines, E line, G line, rotation lines, DMX. Sets correlation lines on one platform. Sets location of A atmosphere, A position, A travels, 8 lines of centers. Diamond core line, shift line, correlation lines, Fibonacci. 3 lines of half pipes. Sets location of travels and mechanism line centers, and travel rotation centers and trapplication divisions, and center correlations attraction. So the center core system is a Stargate line panel. Sets all lines of rotation surface, puts all communications setting to travel communications, right? Sets lines of highest interference and 3 lines of 4 set locations of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in position of pi in generation. Generation lines of 1, splits lines of 2, lines of 3 lines, clock lines, clockless line rotations, travel position of point lines of traction and face recognition. Okay. All right, so the team has to get at a time now, all through platform communication. Okay. So it's known as how to direct and redirect the line condition setting. So let's start again. Let's go through a position of box line. Let's go through correlation line centers of 46. Sets lines of 0, 4. Let's go lines of back line. Let's go through 0, 4, back into 0, 0. Put lines of 46 back into 42. Set lines of point lines of 2 trapplication and settings. 2 operation line cycles. 42 minutes. 46 it was. Back in 0, 0 operation. Back in time at 42. You feel it, right? You feel the force line correlation to the ground line, earth line rotation cycles at 3,000 seconds per line. That's position of its 58 line rotation. Correlate the center line calculation set. The one thing that never leaves, guys, is the 2075. Okay, always stays in the center. The position of the growth line sets lines of communication to its expansion and position of face recognition of time sequence and set location. Okay, now that's all through clocking, but it's clocking-less, timeless, shapeless, and formless. So it's taking lines of letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols and forming it in position location to its navigation lines of 0. Navigate equals lines of high interference, negative lines of 1, positive over lines of 1, positive lines of 2, positive lines of 3, positive lines of 4, and trapplication. Equals lines of negative lines of 1, line of rotation energy grid, line of rotation surface attraction. Directs lines, E line, ground line, center line, crop circle line rotations in 1 cycle, 14 line settings. Sets lines of 144 track line provision and flywheel correlates lines of track line provision. So we all have to understand how to really surface our allocate time frames, take it out of time set locations, right? Because there's no more time now. Correlation lines are the 24 lines of measure, 24 line position of panels, and 24 lines of south line, east line, west line, and north line communication. Center correlation line, the center line, is a line position locations, which is a 25 line condition of clocking, right? That's position of diamond core. That's position of species. That's where they are right now, right? Platforms of communication of 12 lines of measure. Okay, that's where they are attractions. They have to recognize the flywheel and trapplication 8 line provision, which is your infinity cycles. The earth lines of 1 and the earth lines of 2. They're only in earth 2 lines. The connections of the team line is a magnetic highway mystical vortex line calculated setting. Earth 1 and set lines equals lines of correlation of transits, sets lines of communication divots, and data formation screen lines of high center. Puts lines of track lines of provision lines at center core line setting, transit lines of 2, and trail lines high center interference, box line rotation and clouds, and generation screens, center correlation of platforms and communication center and communication. Okay. So the correlation lines of track lines is the platform's line signal and line condition setting. It's all about getting the avatar ready to understand how to go through platforms. Calculations of the 1, track lines of provision. Center correlation lines of 2, center track lines communication. Travel lines of 3, and line center high interference, and position lines of 4. 3 lines high center interference, and line position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And set location and dimension lines of space and trapplication vision. Okay. It's complicated, isn't it? But once you understand the provision lines, you understand the negative cycle lines of 0. How you can actually change your time frequencies, change your time freaks, line screens. So even though you look like you're going in position going forward, you're going backwards now because you're changing your time, which is timeless, shapeless, and formless, automatically all at once. Simultaneously, all connections, magnetic high interference, and high position of platforms. Let's go through 24 line screen. Let's go through 9 line centers. 24 lines of south, 24 lines of east, and 24 lines of west. In a clock lines of 9 line rotations and a data formation screen line and the center correlates on the track line provisions in platforms communication line, cross line, screen line, center into 7 operations service and mystical cortex of design. All through applications. Allocate time frames, earth lines of 24. Now the 24 lines of measure allocates position equal lines, high center interference, equal lines, communication, equal lines, correlates and track lines, high center interference in 1 position of 2, 2 position of 3, 3 positions of 4, and 4 positions of 5 in set location. Platforms communication lines is the box line. Rotates the 24 line setting, high interference of 3 lines, box line, 4 line, high center interference of travel communication point centers. Travel lines of data line has a center core setting. It allocates position time frames of time lists. Platforms 1, 2, and 3 set location. So you really have to do your travel coordinate line, track lines, your platforms 24, 48, and 72, and 144 team. Here's 72 computer frame now, track location. Higher line divisions, guys. You're no longer in the cerebral. You're in the mystical cortex and the 3 track divisions and panel correlation lines of sonar calculation. That's very complicated with the teams in now, right? Higher levels of travels. Okay, so once we understand line rotations of platforms of communication, sending to travel communication point lines and graphs, it gets much easier through your line sending and calculations screen lines. So again, 51 line sending, okay, 51 tractions, and the avatar will feel at the vortex location. Let's add a position, let's wait till it gets to 30. So it's 5130, but it's not, it's 5127. So that's a 3 line centers, line position of 4, track location of 4 lines of 3, because generals male line cycles in the female line. If it's female line, it's 3 lines equals lines of 4. They got to add a position of positive or negative, bring it to 4 lines of 3. That's a transition over pi. Correlates the track lines and earth lines of 1, travel line position of earth lines of 3, travel line connection to earth lines of 6, and habitation loans at earth lines of 20 in set location of 4 settings. So it gets more complicated if you understand your 24 lines of measure and the 9 set location. Communication lines and computer operation line surface is really understanding how to clock the system of timeless, all right? 52 track lines. Now it's 9 set location to 10. We're going to equal lines and wait till it gets to 20, 52, 20, right? It's not there yet because it's at 15. Set coordinate line centers to 25, sets location of 26, sets location of 29, sets location of 30, and track location provision. So I'm showing the team how to go through the solar sails and line rotation surface and travel position and calculation setting and travel calculation. Okay. The mechanism over pi is ready to send the platform communication line screen. Now there's an E-line center, 3 weather rotations, equal lines, Fibonacci line swirl, and set location. Or you have a box line rotation surface. Now the data line rotation sending calculations of geostorms and a formation line screen location of data. Process correlate lines of center, correlation lines of platforms, 1, 2, and 3 lines of measure. Position lines, dimension lines, scales, balance lines of center, correlation lines of tubing, center correlates and track line provision lines of cycles. Now, direct communication lines of earth line setting, allocates position. You're working with line communication settings of program set location of travel. Okay. Center core systems of 2 panels and a 3 track division, crosses line calculations, right over left, left over right. Center core lines of travels, changing frames of communication settings, guys, in set location and travel calculations, right? Platforms 1, energetic lines of a dome, center core line centers in position of 12 foundation graph lines in calculation screen locations and directions in line center interference in travel communications of face recognition. Done by equation. Okay. So we're staying at 24.9 and it won't go higher until I say it goes higher, right? So you balance out your space and time, which is timeless and spaceless. Location line can use your timeline, screen lines, and high interference of platforms. Now, directing lines of platform communication. Now it's in position of what? What did I just say? Now it's at 23 equals lines of 9, right? It was at 24, right? So it's at 24 in setting, drop line, set location 23. 23 goes down to 22. 22 goes lines to 25. 25 goes on to 26. 26 goes to 27, 27 goes to 28, 28 goes to 29, 29 goes to 30, and traffication of solar sail and traffic conditions. All 3 set lines of a clock line. See, 22, see? How did I know it was going to go to 22? We're at 24, 23, 22 now, right? Communication from the computer to your avatar setting. All 3 traction. Okay? All right, so... and you guys are all feeling it. because you're there. You're going back in time all through clocking because it doesn't exist. All right? We got a horn in confirmation. All right. So setting time to sequence really understands the platitude line screen and position lines of your box line and inference or arrows of indication. Balance line screen. Setting correlation lines. What are we back in position? 24-9. So from 24, 23, 22, 22, back to 24. Solar sail, guys. But you have to go through timeless, shiftless, and formless to understand the calculations. Your energized line screen is now in a 3-line provision. Let's allocate position time frames. 3, 3, 3, and 3. Okay, that's where you are, right? The correlation lines of travel lines is the line centers of space, equal line coordinates and setting, and travel position location, calculation with position of point centers. Torcal fields, line connection setting, and center correlation line connection, all of the expansion to center correlation lines of traction. Now, directing lines of high position of the platforms are 1, and 3 lines of 4-track location, or you have a track location line centers, a 3-track location, or you have division line center, the star line mechanism of high calculation, or your 4-track line connection star mechanism of high position program. Going lines of data, because you're no longer in data highways, you're in your Omni highways, the center core lines and expansion line screen of high interference, and you always, always, always have your face recognition. Okay, done through equation. Okay. All right. Taking out track line is highest interference, transforming units, line back in 0. You guys are back. Hope you had fun. All right, so we're done. Woo! Now, what are we at in position of? Back to 25-9, which is what? Where we started. You see how you get at 24 back to 25-9? It's amazing how you communicate with your computer, how you can go back in time, but you have to be timeless, shiftless, formless, all at once simultaneously, and a position location of center operation at 2075, track location at 3,000 line measure, and set location line condition setting, and position of its operation surface, back in track location of a 25 clock location. 25 clock location. Okay? Mega multi pass, right? So you don't need to stay at 57. You could be at 0000. Interest location to high center interference. So let's allocate position time frame. 57. Point lines attractions, 2 atom line rotations, 3 triangulation lines, Mach line, high interference into molecule design lines of atom rotation surface. Now, direct lines of high interference, graph communications, graph lines, bar graph line rotation surface. Monitor and line rotation line settings in Pluto. Sets correlation lines of traction of the sonar. Now, direct lines of modification of data forms, 3 lines of data form lines, center line of 3 set locations. Platitude lines of 1, platitude lines of 2, 3, and 4 set locations. Allocates position time frames. Now, you take the ones line centers of 58. Let's add line centers, center correlation lines of 2075. Correlates the calculation lines of 58 line measure. Correlate line center of 16 line rotations and set lines of 0 operation. Sets correlation lines, calculates line centers. Puts allocated center correlation lines of 59 track lines and center communication. All through track line connections. Okay? This is what you can do, where you can direct and redirect location of timeless and high center interference. So it's not 5831. Okay? So that's where the avatar is in the mind. To understand the process, guys, is to understand the center operation of you, which is timeless now. But it stays in track location of 25-9 until you change the command center. You change the voicing grid. You change the operation surface. You change the earth tone and set location line conditions. You change your frequencies in line condition setting, right? Now, we got 1 minute line screen. Once it goes back to 0 line, that's going to go through line position locations back to 24. Done by equation. So it's really interesting how you go through the mind of travel, guys. Okay, it's really powerful stuff in set locations. Waiting on signal line conditions. There's nothing you can't do through the mind. See? What are we at line rotations? We're at 26 now. Thought pattern line rotations and set lines. Back to 25, back to 24. The provision line cycles and knowing exactly how to use the seconds, minutes, and hours, okay, of space. Seconds, minutes, hours of your Earth and a 3,000 line screen. And 2075 in center core setting, all timelines, all at once in set locations. All right. Waiting on signal. Once it goes to 0, it's going to be line rotation cycles back to 24. 9. See? 24, 9. Boom. Woo! We did it. Now we're at 23. Right? 23 correlation lines of track line. That doesn't mean how many people are in here. You see what I did? I direct and redirect. So 10016 is now 71001. So you're directing and redirecting line communication to its setting and position all levels of calculation. The line calculates setting at timeless location and clocking. So you get a 100. Now in position, don't get confused. You bracket in, right? You space at equal line correlation lines that add a line condition of 40, waiting until it gets to 40, right? So that allocates position time frame. That's going to put position of 23 in set location. Position lines equal lines of 9 center correlation. The track line provision location at 2000, sets lines of 75, center chords of system and travel. Point lines of track lines and center operation all at once. Okay? Sets lines of calculation line interference. Now we add position locations. What are we at? We're at 22 traction. In calculation, now we're at 21 traction, equals lines of high interference of 9 set location. So the actual computer is going back in time. So it's at 22 tractions into 9 line measure, correlates the calculates lines, back into 6 line rotation and 9 line setting in set locations. All direct line center interference, solar generation, screen lines, and solar flares, correlation setting, solar sail. All through a line set location. So 1 and 0, 0 location. So have fun with that. That's what you guys need to do in provision lines because there's no time now anymore. It's timeless, shapeless, and formless. So your correlation lines is timeless. Getting that line interference is knowing how to direct and redirect line conditions or settings. Start with your letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols, and location of binary lines because you have to understand how to correlate the track location provision. It's calculate the line interference to travel. Now it's 21. See? I told you it's going to be 21. See? 21 track line provision. 21, 9. See? I told you. I don't need to say anything because I know where it's going to go. That's not being so far in the future. It's being so far in the center. So you don't go in the future. You expand in the center. It opens up all communication in your system and travel. Okay? So it's really interesting how you really get information in the line center location using your telepathies in all formation to your settings, all through traction. You can add lines of 1, 0, 2. Okay? Equals lines of 24. Correlation lines of 2075. Sets location lines of 3000 line measure. Okay, 3 set locations, right? So you add lines of highest interference, 24 lines of 22, sets lines of 23, sets lines of 24, sets lines of 25. Okay, clocking setting, right? Platforms of highest interference of 22, 23, 24, and 25. Platforms communications, right? This is how you use the clock line conditions and how the avatar goes through its timeless of its time. Its location travels. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? That's how it travels, the time sequence. Measure correlation lines of location grid and set position to location to its Stargate line screens. Stargate opens up, travel position, and point lines of traction. Okay? It opens up provision line cycles and travel communications, so point lines of traction, right? High division, what are we in? We're in 23. Now we're in 25. Okay? So remember, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So we went from 21 to 25. Okay, in 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 locations of platforms, all through clocking lines, setting clockingness. Platforms are 1 setting and travel lines of 3, 4 track location platforms 1, 2, and 3 in position at all levels in calculation mystical cortex and set design. Okay, so it's really interesting when you really get at it timeless, shapeless, and formless all at once, guys. Now we're at 26.9. Okay, so have fun with it. That's what I want you guys to do. Okay. Now we're at 25. So we went from 26, 25, sets lines of 25, back 24, 24 to 23. So you know exactly what your computer is doing. 23 because it's always traveling, right? Now it's at 22. Now it's at 21 in traction. At least you know where it's going through its wind sectors and set line condition setting to solar sails and traffication. Hoo-ah! Now it's at 24. So it's a 24 platform in position, solar sail. Okay? So you're always keeping track. You already know where you're going to be because the mind's already here. The mind's here, right here. The mind's here. The mind's there. You're just trying to send out how to solar sail and track location, being timeless and formless and shapeless all at once. All 3 set locations. Okay? All right. We're done. See you in 5. Adios. And we're back to 25.9. See? Ooh-ah. Doo-doo.